It's your boy Gsluke here with our round one prize picks targets for this week's Wells Fargo Championship. We're at a new course this time, so don't be looking at the last 3 to 4 years for any sort of data this week. We're at TPC Potomac for this year's iteration of the Wells Fargo because we're at the President's Cup for Quail Hollow in just a few months. So trying to differentiate it a little bit for us viewers from an entertainment standpoint, and for prize picks, that should open up quite a bit of value. There's quite a bit of unknown about this golf course, but we used to see it in the past for a good 23 years during the 80s and 90s, and then as recently as 2017 and 2018 for the Quicken Loans National. So we do have an idea of how this plays, of course, some reports from the grounds from some of the media members throughout the week. So here in this video, we'll be covering some of what I've learned, how we expect this course to play, a weather report, but of course, my top 5 props for my cards. Now, not all my cards are going to be 5 props, but I'm going to have a 5-leg card, a ton of 2-leg power plays, some 3 and 4-leg cards as well to go out and try and take home a ton of profit, even if we aren't perfect, because the last 3 videos we've had here, we've gone 4 for 5. The last time out, I'm going to put a slight asterisk on it because we did have a scoring error kind of come through and take away a huge day from us. Of course, that was Sebastian Munoz, who on hole number 12 on Sunday was given as a fringe, even though on the shot tracker, it looked pretty clearly on the green. But I digress, an issue from the scorers out there. But still 4 for 5 our last 3 events. That has been huge, right? That's usually right around a 4 or even 5 unit win when you go out there and have that type of day, because you're hitting on a lot of those 3-leg parlays, those 4-leg parlays, and of course a lot of those flexes where you're only missing 1 out of your guys. So it was a huge weekend for us in general. I was actually able to withdraw over $2,000. So looking to build on that momentum, of course, for this week at the Wells Fargo. So with that being said, let's go ahead and hop right on into it. All right, guys, on the screen, you can see the weather report here for Thursday, and it's a little bit of an interesting one where we have more wind in the morning than in the afternoon, which of course is abnormal. Usually it's the opposite, where it'll be a little bit calmer in the morning than in the afternoon, but there's a little bit of a storm cell coming through there late Wednesday night, but also through Thursday morning. You can see a little bit of moisture in the forecast as well, so might see a shower or 2 over those morning hours, but more importantly, wind gusts in the 17 to 20 mile an hour range and sustained winds in that 13 to 14 mile an hour range. So typically we're trying to target those guys teeing off right around 7 or 8 a.m. That could not be further from the truth here for Thursday. I'm actually looking to fade some of those guys that are teeing off super early. Guys like a Rory McIlroy, Tyrrell, Hatton, Tony Finau. Just a ton of the big names in this field are teeing off right around 7:30 to 8 a.m. Eastern time. So a lot of them also teeing off on hole number 10, which happens to be one of the holes that is on the prize picks board. Nothing that I'm looking at, but makes for an interesting perhaps target there for the first start of their round, right? They're starting in the hardest conditions of the day when you're going to have 17 mile an hour wind gusts on a 560-yard par 5. So something that I haven't added to my card but could consider adding. But in the afternoon, right around 12 or even 1 p.m., you can see it starts to calm down, right? The sustained winds go from right around 12 miles an hour down to 8 to even 6 and 3 miles an hour by the time we get to 4 to 5 p.m. And the wind gusts go the whole way down to the single digits. So in terms of playability of the golf course, it's going to take it at least a stroke easier, maybe even a stroke and a half easier, as when you're playing in that single digit range, it's like there's no wind out there at all. You're going to move the golf ball 4 to 5 yards at most, and if anything, it can help you shape shots into greens. Whereas when you have that 10 to 15 mile an hour gusts, sometimes 20 mile an hour gusts, like we'll have towards the beginning of the day there, it has a much bigger impact, and of course it's a little bit more variable. When it starts to gust, you get like 10 to 15 miles an hour difference between the strength. It's hard to gauge that type of thing. Let's hop over to the prize picks board, but first start off with a review of this course. It's TPC Potomac. It's a par 70, so keep that in mind when we look at the stroke scores here. Of course, 2 under par would end up being a push for some of the guys at the top of the board, but let's consider the winning score here. So in 2017, it was just 7 under par. And there in 2018, it was 21 under par. Now, 21 under par sounds like a relatively easy golf course, except when you consider that second place was just 13 under par. Francesco Molinari absolutely ran away with it there in 2018. So you're looking at a difficult golf course, mostly due to its rough, where you have 3 to 4 inch Kentucky bluegrass rough. Also some natural areas, because this is an Audubon certified golf course that cannot be touched. You have waist high, even higher than that, fescue grass in some areas here, where if you hit into it, a lot of times it's a lost ball, let alone you trying to hack the ball out of there. It's usually impossible. So you're going to see plenty of penalty strokes in the terms of unplayables or people re-teeing out of some of these penalty areas. And in general, you're looking for guys that are accurate off the tee, of course, to avoid those penalty areas, and of course to keep it out of that Kentucky bluegrass rough, but also good approach players. A lot of the greens here are surrounded by rough rather than fairways, which means when you're missing, you're going to have pretty difficult around the green shots. So really the name of the game here, to shoot low, to go and of course make a lot of birdies, is to be on top of that approach play. So if I had to rank my stats, it'd be number 1, approach play, number 2, driving accuracy off the tee. After that, everything else is just, I'd say, a boost, right? You're not really having to be good around the green or a really solid putter to have success here. But of course, those are really good to see. Let's hop into the player board here, though. You can see that there's 5 props that I'm going with. Of course, if you combine them, that is a 12.5x parlay. But like I mentioned during the intro, most of my cards, at least most of my money, right, isn't going to be any 5-leg par. It's just more of a lottery ticket than anything. More focusing on those 3 or 4-leg power plays, which tend to give you the highest ROI long term. But let's talk about the props that I like. First off, with our fades, which is going to be Mark Leishman at 69. I'm taking the over on, and he's one of these players teeing off in the morning conditions. He's teeing off right around 8 a.m. Eastern time. We'll be teeing off of hole number 10, the easiest hole on the golf course, but also when it's going to be playing its most difficult. So somebody who might be a little bit behind the 8 ball, especially considering that from a skill set perspective, this is not the best course for him. He's one of the most inaccurate drivers of the golf ball, particularly of some of these elite tier golfers. And at this golf course, that is not going to fly. Like I said, you have some creeks in play, some lakes that are going to be in play, that super long rough, those natural areas that are pretty much on every single hole and every single tee shot. Mark Leishman, if he hits just 1, even 2 bad tee shots, he hit a ton of them at the Zurich Classic out of bounds. Going to be a huge issue in this format, or I shouldn't say this format, at this type of golf course, at this venue. So I don't really like him there at 69 strokes. I really think that at the best, he's going to push. I think in the morning, you're going to see a scoring average of over par. I could very well see it being half a stroke, maybe even a whole entire stroke over par. Now in the afternoon, when it's not quite as windy, it's going to be slightly less damp, right? There's a ton of rain there. You can see rain there was in the forecast there for Thursday morning. It's going to play longer than it actually needs to. But in the afternoon, some of that's going to evaporate. Perhaps starting to play a little bit like its usual self, which is slightly easier than I would expect it to play in the morning, closer to maybe half a stroke under par, right around even par. So that's why somebody like Mark Leishman, I'm taking the over on, because the skill set fit, just the fact that most of the players in the field are going to be shooting over par in the morning, and also his recent form, right? At the Zurich Classic, like I said, he did not look his best. Was spraying it off the tee, which is the main issue here. Also wasn't very sharp on approach. Now he was his usual self around the green and on the greens. That's kind of what Mark Leishman is known for, but to shoot better than 69, you definitely have to have the ball striking there. So somebody that will be fading in this format. Next up, we have Tyrrell Hatton here at 4.5 birdies. Somebody I'm taking the under on. You can see he's priced up at the top with guys like a Tony Finau, who of course ended up finishing in 2nd place last week after a blistering pace there on Sunday. You have Rory McIlroy, who had the Sunday finish at the Masters, almost ended up getting up to the top of that board. And then Corey Connors, who's one of the betting favorites this week. The odd man out's Tyrrell Hatton, who's not coming in with the best of form, and I know he played well at the RBC Heritage, at least in terms of finishing position, but he was spraying it all over the yard. He was hardly hitting any fairways. In fact, he hit less than 6 fairways in every single round. So that's why if we take a look at his fairway prop here, now I'm not betting this, right? It's down here at 7. Now, you would think he'd hit more than 7 fairways, but I can't bet on that considering how much he was spraying it at the RBC Heritage. These fairways are smaller. It's a much bigger penalty when you're missing these fairways because of how long the rough is. And then you have those natural areas. So at 4.5 birdies, I know he's an immaculate putter. He can be really solid with the approach play at times. Now, of late, he hasn't been very solid with the approach play, at least consistent. He's a loser to the field over his last 24 rounds in terms of shots gained approach. All of those things really concern me. And And the fact that he's priced at the top of the board really seals it, right? Now, if he was at 4 birdies or better, I probably wouldn't be touching him, right? I think he has a pretty decent shot to get to 4, to push at a 4 type of number. But a 4.5, where that's a win for us, absolutely love targeting it, right? For him to get to 5 or 6 birdies, he's going to have to be on top of that ball striking. And much like a Mark Leishman, he's also teeing off in the harder of the conditions in the morning. Now, same with Rory McIlroy, same thing with Tony Finau and Corey Connors. Of course, to go over here to the strokes, like you have Rory McIlroy, Tony Finau, all these guys at 68 strokes. The reason why I'm not able to fade them there is they're the best players in the world, right? You kind of got to pick your spots here, right? Mark Leishman not coming in with the best form, so he makes sense in terms of a fade. And I'd much rather fade Tyrrell Hatton at 4.5 birdies, because all he has to do to push at 68 is make 2 birdies and then get up and down all day. And Tyrrell Hatton is unbelievable at saving par. I mean, the guy has one of the best short games that you'll see in the world, and he doesn't really get the knack for that, or at least the reputation for it. He should. So I'd rather go to the birdies or better mark, where I don't see him getting those 5 or 6 birdies. So those are going to be my 2 fades. On pretty much every card that I enter, I'm going to try and sprinkle in at least one of these, right? Because when you do so, you do get a little bit of extra value with your cards. Even with those 3 and 4 leg power plays, you're getting at least maybe a 0.5 extra in terms of your ROI, or even 2 to 2.5, depending on how you're setting it up. If you combine both of them into a 4-leg card, that's when you start to get a ton of value, when you can get like an 11x parlay on a power play with just 4 props. Now let's talk about the guys that I like. So it'll be Sergio Garcia, Jason Day, and Matt Kuchar that are all playing in the afternoon conditions. So after everything's calmed down, the greens are going to be what you'd expect for this golf course, kind of playing like their usual self. These are the guys that I'm looking to target. So first off, Sergio Garcia at 69 strokes. Because this is a par 70, all he has to do is shoot 1 under par to push. And he's playing in easier conditions. He's the exact type of ball striker we're looking for. Extremely solid with his shots gained off the tee. And even though he's a bomber, he's also one of the most accurate drivers in the world, right? That's what separates him. That's why he is one of the best drivers we've ever seen. Certainly going to pay dividends at this golf course. We've seen it pay dividends at TPC Sawgrass, another positional golf course, and also one of the best iron players of all time. So put those 2 things together, expect him to go out there, have a really solid round. And given that there's 2 par 5s, you have the drivable par 3, I think at the very least he pushes here. So I think the huge differentiator between him and a Mark Leishman, of course, is the wave that they're playing in, but also the skill set, right? Mark Leishman does it with the short game. It's not really what gets it done at this venue, whereas Sergio Garcia is the immaculate, perfect course fit, right? Straight off the tee, perfect with his approach play, not going to put himself in much trouble at all. There's somebody that I'll be supporting and taking the under on there at 69. And now lastly, we have 2 birdie or better props that I'm taking. So first and foremost, going to be Jason Day at 3.5 birdies. And you'd say, right, this is a tough golf course, but they're playing in the afternoon. Like I said, 2 par 5s, 1 drivable par 4, 2 par 4s that could potentially be drivable depending on how they set this up, a few par 3s that are less than 175 yards. There are plenty of birdie opportunities out there. The real differentiator is you got to have somebody that's going to put themselves in position. And Jason Day has been much better with the ball striking over his last 3 to 4 events. And he's been, frankly, the last year and a half, even 2 years. Health has been holding him back. It's been the back, I should say the back, right? No pun intended there. That has been holding him back. But now that his health's in order, he's really been focusing on that aspect of his life. He's been taking more time off in between events, not overexerting himself. He's taken a few weeks off going into this event. I would expect this to be a solid week to target him. He's got the approach play we're looking for. He's got the hot putter that we're looking for. But more importantly, he's at 3.5 birdies. All he has to do is get to 4 birdies for us to hit. Now, I don't want to say that those par 5s are gimmies. They're relatively long. I mean, hole number 10 is only 560 yards. So for the guys in the afternoon, I would expect them to make birdie on it. But for the guys at the 600 par 5, that's not a gimme, right? So it's not a gimme that he ends up hitting the over here, but I'm much more comfortable about targeting these guys at 3.5 birdies than the guys at 4, or especially the guys at 4.5 birdies, just because we have that push in our back pocket if they happen to be at 4. If they get to 4, if the guys are at 3.5, it's why especially like guys like a Jason Day and Matt Kuchar, we end up hitting for them. So if I had to put an average on Jason Day and Matt Kuchar here, for Jason Day I have him projected for 4.3 birdies, Matt Kuchar I have him projected for 4.4, so actually a little bit higher than Jason Day, but either way, well above that threshold. For guys like Matt Fitzpatrick, right, it's a trivial difference. I have him projected for like 4.6 birdies. Guys like a Paul Casey, for example, 4.4 birdies. there's a little bit more upside in going to the guys that are projected for right around that same rate, maybe a little bit less than somebody like a Matt Fitzpatrick, but that are at 3.5, right? In terms of ROI, actual percentage chance of getting to that outcome, there's a lot more expected value there. So that's why I'm trying to target these guys at 3.5. I mean, there's some guys at 4, right, I have projected for higher. I mean, even Sergio Garcia, right? We took him at the strokes, but I only have him projected for 4.5 birdies, right? So it's higher than it, but a lot of the times that's going to end up being a push, not a hit for us. I'd much rather even go to somebody like a Russell Knox down here, or some of these guys down here at 4, right? So these are the 2 favorites that I'll be going to. But if they're not your favorites, right, there's plenty of options in this range you can go to. Just I wouldn't be taking any of these guys up top because they're all playing in the harder conditions. And to get to that 5-6 birdie mark on a par 70 setup where you don't have those 4 normal par 5s, going to be a little bit of a tougher ask. Let's talk about Matt Kuchar, though, who is actually an even better course fit than Jason Day. That's why he's projected for more birdies than Jason Day. He's accurate off the tee. He's coming in with good recent form, and he always shows up at these par 70 short type of setups. It just plays into his skill set. He can lead into the strong iron play, the strong putter from time to time, and he doesn't need the par 5s to score, right? A majority of his birdies come on par 4s, your normal type of holes where he gets himself out there to 15 to 25 feet and he makes a long putt, right? He's not going to be reaching these par 5s into, even hole number 10, that's only 560 yards. Not really sure he's going to be taking a crack at that, right? He's going to put himself in wedge range, lean into his skill set, and given that he has 18 chances to make a birdie, just make some putts on this slate. I'd expect him to ride that hot form that we've seen over the last 3 to 4 events for Matt Kuchar and go out there and hit the over for us. So, like I said before, if I had to rank these, just to give you an idea of how I'm actually putting them into my cards, number 1 would be the Tyrrell Hatton under. That's my favorite card here on the slate. Number 2 would have to be the Sergio Garcia under for this projected strokes. So one's an quote-unquote over, one's a quote-unquote under out of those 2. Number 3, I'd say the Mark Leishman over. I really like that fade. And the last 2 would be these birdies are better marks. Because like I said, there's a ton of other substitutes that I'm actually going to have in lineups. I mean, I know for a fact I'm going to have this Russell Knox 3.5 number. I know for a fact I'm going to be mixing in some of these guys like a Gary Woodland and Max Homa. Absolutely love them in DFS this week as well. So guys that I'm going to have a little bit of exposure to on this side, and maybe even the Sergio Garcia 4 birdies number. Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to have that. I do like the strokes number a whole lot more, and the 4 birdies are better number there. But all intriguing options that I'd consider adding to cards as well. All right, guys, that's all I've got here for the Prize Picks preview. Before you hop on out of here, let me know down in the comments what your favorite prop on the board is. Let me know whether it's something that I was considering or completely off my radar. Maybe you're digging that whole number 10 strokes out there. Just unfortunately, all the guys are playing in the morning. Or maybe the whole 14 strokes. That's a drivable par 4. A lot of the guys on the board are playing in the afternoon. But whatever it is, go ahead and let me know down below, guys. And as per usual, going to have you covered for all of the slates throughout the weekend. So we'll have a video coming out tomorrow night for Friday slate, for Saturday and Sunday as well. So look forward to that. If you haven't already hit the like button, make sure you go ahead and smash that before you hop on out of here as well. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, make sure you go ahead and do that too. You're not going to want to miss any of that content to come. And I don't just post for this golf tournament. I'll be posting for all of the events to come. So a lot of content going to be dropping here over the next 6 months to a year. Appreciate you guys. Best of luck for all of your cards here for round 1, all of your DFS lineups if you're doing that sort of thing. And let's get this cash.